all times to you.
What ba?
Stolen focus, page
65.
64.
64.
64. My name is Tim. This is my elder brother Tron. And we're going to be reading today. And Tron would like to start us off. Ba, 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 ba. Doo, doo. Ah.
She decided to teach them the science of why the bodies need to sleep, but she found herself in a strange position. The students knew they were bone tired, but the problem is they've been accustomed to that since puberty, basically. They've seen their parents and grandparents chronically sleep deprivating themselves too. They've grown up being accustomed to being exhausted and trying to medicate that away with caffeine or other stimulants as a state of normal. So I'm fighting against the current that says it's normal to be exhausted all the time. She started to show them some experiments. You can test the time it takes for a person to react to something. A picture that changes on the screen, say, or a ball that's thrown to them. The people with the quickest reaction times are the ones sleeping the most, she shows them. And the less they sleep, the less they see or react. This is just one way of many that shows that you're more efficient when you're rested, and it takes you less time to do things. That you don't need to have 6 screens or tabs open when you're doing your homework just to keep yourself awake. At first, when I talked with Charles and Roxanne and other sleep experts, I thought, yes, this is bad. But they are talking about really exhausted people, an outlying group of the truly knackered. But they kept explaining to me it only takes a small amount of sleep loss for these negative effects to kick in. Roxanne showed me that if you stay awake for 18 hours, so you woke up at 6 a.m. and went to sleep at midnight, by the end of the day, your reactions are equivalent to if you had 0.05% blood alcohol. She said, stay up another 3 hours and you're the equivalent of being legally drunk. Charles explained, many people say, well, I don't stay up all night, so I'm fine. But in fact, if you miss a couple of hours of sleep every night, and you do this night after night, within a week or two, you're at the same level of performance and impairment as you would be staying up all night. Everybody falls apart with 2 nights of missed sleep. Or you can get to the same point by sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, and going for a couple of weeks. As he said this,
Dan?
I remembered
You hear what we read?
40% of us live on the brink of that. Tim,
Yeah.
your turn.
That part good, Jung. That part really good, baby. Yep.
If you're not sleeping well, your body interprets that as an emergency. Roxanne said, you can deprive yourself of sleep and live. We could never raise children if we didn't drop down our sleep, right? We'd never survive hurricanes. You can do that, but it comes at a cost. The cost that is that your body shifts into the sympathetic nervous system zone. So your body is like, uh-oh, you're depriving yourself of sleep. Must be an emergency. So I'm going to make all these physiological changes.
Psychology.
Yeah, no. Psychological psychological changes to prepare yourself for that emergency.
What is that thing?
Raise your blood pressure. I'm going to make you want more fast food. I'm gonna make you want more sugar. Quick energy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make your heart rate rise. So it's like all this shift to say, I'm ready. Your body doesn't know why it's staying awake. Your brain doesn't know you're sleep deprived because you're goofing
Ian,
off.
no one can understand you.
And what is
So you gotta talk properly.
Democratic Park and did really good park, son.
Psychological.
I know bad pronunciation.
Psychology.
Psychology.
Say again, dear.
Psychological.
Psychological.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying.
Just skip the word.
No, skip. Read again.
Psychological.
Dan. Go.
Yep, psychological.
Sort of alarm bell. In this bodily emergency, your brain doesn't just cut back on immediate short-term focus. It cuts off resources to do other long-term forms focus too. When we sleep, our minds start to identify connections and patterns from what we've experienced during the day. This is one key source of creativity. It's why narcoleptic people who sleep a lot are significantly more creative. Sleep deprived
Deprived.
No, sleep deprivation.
Not deprivation.
You got it wrong.
Because you're saying.
Sleep Wait, let's do that. Sleep deprivation damages memory as well. When you go to bed tonight, your mind will start to transfer the things you have learned during the day into your long-term memory. Xavier
Castellanos.
Xavier Castellanos, who I interviewed at New York University, where he is a professional of child
Dan, come on.
And adult and adolescence.
Adolescence. That way up to. Yeah, adolescence. Yes.
Adolescent. Side charity. Explain to me that you can.
Charity. Psychiatry. Yep. Psychiatry.
Side charity.
Not psychiatry.
Side charity.
Psychiatry.
Explain to me. You can get watch to learn a maze, and that night you can monitor what happens in their brains as they sleep. What you find is that they are retracing their steps in the maze, one by one, coding them into their long-term memory. The less you sleep, the less this happens, and the less you will feel, and the less you'll be able to recall. These effects are especially powerful for children. If you deprive kids of sleep, they begin to show attention problems rapidly and often go into a maniac state.
Can you up, Susie? For years, I believed I could cheat my way into getting all the benefits of proper sleep through technical fixes. The most obvious is caffeine. I once heard an almost certainly apocryphal story about Elvis. Apocryphal story about Elvis. That in the last years of his life, his doctor would wake him up by injecting caffeine directly into his veins. When I heard this, I didn't think, how awful. I thought, where's that doctor been all my life? For years I reasoned, okay, I don't sleep enough, but I make up for it with coffee, Coke Zero, and Red Bull. But Roxanne explained to me what I was really doing when I drank all this. Throughout the day, in your brain, a chemical is building up called adenosine, and it signals to you when you're sleepy. Caffeine blocks the receptor and picks up on the level of adenosine. I likened it to putting a post-it note over your fuel gauge indicator. If you're not giving yourself more energy, you're just not realizing how empty you are. When the caffeine wears off, you're doubtly exhausted. The less you sleep, the more the world blurs in every way. In your immediate focus, in your ability to think deeply and make connections, and in your memory. Charles told me that even if nothing else was changing in our society, this decline in how much we sleep is on its own enough to prove that our crisis in focusing and paying attention is real. It's very sad to watch this play out and not be able to stop this, he said. It's like watching a crash that is happening. Every expert I spoke to said this transformation explains, in part, our declining attention. Dr. Sandra Coolidge is one of the leading experts on adult ADHD in Europe. And when I went to interview her in The Hague, she told me bluntly, our Western society is a bit ADHD-ish because we're all sleep deprived. It's huge, and it means something for us. So we're all in a hurry. We're all impulsive. We're easily irritated in traffic. You see it everywhere around you. This has been studied and proven in laboratories. You think you're thinking clearly, but you're not. You're much less clear than you could be. She added that when we sleep better, a lot of problems get less. Mood disorders, like obesity, like concentration problems. It repairs a lot of damage. Jean, your turn. Jean, your turn.
As I learned all this, I had some obvious questions. The first was, why did our lack of sleep damage our ability to focus so much? Surprisingly, this is a relatively new research question. Roxanne told me in 1996. Stop. I'm drawing that. Stop. Much. Surprisingly, this is a relatively new research question. Roxanne told me in 1998, when I chose the subject of sleep, to focus on for my dissertation, there wasn't a lot of research on what sleep was for. We knew what it was, and we all do it. And it's kind of mysterious. You're spending a third of your life unconscious, not engaging with the world. It was just this mystery that it seemed like a waste of resources. Charles had been told when he was a young man there was no point studying sleep because it's a passive process. But in fact,
Hurry, baby, hurry. Hurry, finish soon now. Let's go.
It is a passive process. But in fact, he learned sleep is an incredibly active process. When you go into sleep, all sorts of activities take place in your brain and body. All these are necessary for you to be able to function and focus. One of the things that happen is during sleep, your brain cleans itself of waste that has accumulated during the day. During slow wave sleep, your cerebral spinal fluid channels open and more and remove metabolic waste from your brain. Roxanne explained to me, every night when you go to sleep, your brain is rinsed with a watery fluid. This cerebrospinal fluid washes through your brain, flushing out toxic proteins and carrying them down to your liver to get rid of them. So when I'm talking to college students, I call this brain cell poop. If you can't focus well, it might be because you have too much brain cell poop circulating. That can explain why you're tired when you get hungover. When you get a hungover sort of feeling. You're literally clogged up with toxins. This positive kind of brainwashing can only happen when you are asleep. Dr. Macon Negogard at the University of Rochester told one interviewer the brain only has limited energy at its disposal, and it appears that it must choose between two different functional states: awake and aware, or asleep and cleaning up. You can think of it as having a house party. You can either entertain the guests or clean up the house, but you can't really do both at the same time. A brain hasn't been through this necessary cleaning process becomes cleaning process. A brain that hasn't been through this cleaning process becomes more clogged and less able to concentrate. Some scientists suspect this is why people who are underslept are at greater risk in the long term of developing dementia. When you're sleeping, Roxanne says, you're purring.
Another thing that happens during sleep is that your energy levels are restored and replenished. Charles told me that the prefrontal cortex is the judgment area of your brain, and that seems to be particularly sensitive to sleep loss. You see that with even 1 night of sleep loss, the area of the brain is not utilizing glucose, which is the main energy source of the brain. It's sort of going stone cold. Without renewing your sources of energy, you can't think clearly. But for me, the most intriguing process that happens when we sleep is that we dream. And this sunlight also performs an important function. In Montreal, I once interviewed Tor Nielsen, who was a professor of psychiatry. of psychiatry there. He often tells people he has a dream job and asks them to guess what it is. After they've run through the list, racing car driver, chocolate taster, he tells them he runs the Dream Lab at the University of Montreal. He told me that some scientists in the field believe that dreaming somehow helps you adapt emotionally to waking events. When you dream, you can revisit stressful moments, but without the stress hormones flooding your system. Over time, the scientists believe that this can make it easier to handle stress, which makes it easier to focus. Tor emphasizes that there seems to be some evidence supporting this theory, and some contradicting it, and we need to know more to be sure. But if it is correct, then we have a problem, because as a society, we are dreaming less and less. Dreams occur during the stage known as rapid eye movement, REM sleep. Tor told me the longest and most intense REM periods are the ones that occur towards the 7 or 8 hour mark of the sleep cycle. So if you're curtailing your sleep down to 5 or 6 hours, chances are good that you're not getting these long, intense REM periods. As he said this, I wondered, what does it mean to be a society and culture so frantic that we don't have time to dream?
As we find ourselves weird and unable to sleep, more and more of us are turning to drugs and knock ourselves out, whether it's melatonin or alcohol or Ambien. 9 million Americans, 4% of adults, are using prescription sleeping pills, and vastly more are using over-the-counter sleep aids like I did for many years. But like Sam told me bluntly, if you chemically induce sleep, it's not the same kind of sleep. Remember, sleep is an active process in which your brain and body do lots of things. Many of these things don't happen or happen far less in drugged or drunk sleep. The different ways of artificially inducing sleep can have different effects. If you take 5 milligrams of melatonin, which is often a standard dose, that's sold over the counter in the US. Roxanne said that you risk blowing out your melatonin receptors, which would make it harder to sleep without them. Bigger effects kick in with the harder stuff of Ambien and the other prescribed sedatives. She warns, sleep is a really important balance of many neurotransmitters. And if you artificially pump up one, it changes the balance of that sleep. You'll likely have less REM sleep and fewer dreams. And so you lose all the benefits that come from this crucial stage. You're already likely to be groggy throughout the day, which is why sleeping pills increase your risk of death from all causes. You're more likely to get into a car accident. For example, if you've ever had surgery and recovered from that, like coming off anesthesia, Roxanne said, you don't say, oh, I feel so refreshed. Knocking yourself out is like taking a minor anesthetic. Your body doesn't rest and clean and refresh a dream like it needs to. Roxanne told me that there are some legitimate uses for sleeping pills. For example, taking them for a short time after you've had a traumatic bereavement might be sensible, but she warned it's definitely not the solution for insomnia, and that's why doctors are not supposed to prescribe them over the long term. It is so how dysfunctional we have become when it comes to sleep that the people who should be warning us the most about this crisis, doctors, are in fact required to become sleep deprived to get their qualifications. As a part of their medical training, doctors have to do grueling 24-hour shifts on call. They nickname it doing a Jack Orta after the TV show 24, where Kiefer Sutherland can't sleep because he's chasing terrorists. This endangers their patients, but we have to become a culture where even the people who should know best about sleep fetishize staying sleepless beyond the point of reason, just like the rest of us. John.
The second question I found myself asking was, given that the lack of sleep is so harmful, and at some level we all know it, why are we doing it less? Why would we give up one of our most basic needs? There's a big scientific debate about this, and several factors seem to be having an effect. Some are going to come up later in this book. One of them, unexpectedly, is our relationship with physical light. Charles made some of the key breakthroughs on this. Till the 19th century, lives of almost all humans were shaped primarily by the rise and fall of the sun. Our natural rhythms evolved to match it. We got a rush of energy when it got light, and we would feel sleepy after it got dark. For almost all of human history, our ability to intervene in the sleep cycle was pretty limited. We could light fires, but that was it. As a result, humans evolved to be as sensitive to changes of light. Charles said, as algae and cockroaches. But suddenly, with the invention of the electric light bulb, we gained the power to control the light we get exposed to. And this power has started to scramble our internal rhythms. Here's a clear example. We evolved to get a rush of energy, a surge of waking drive, Charles said, when the sun begins to set. This was very helpful to our ancestors. Imagine out camping and the sun starts to fall. It's very useful if you then feel a rush of wakefulness, because then you'll be able to set up your tent before it's too dark to do it. In the same way, our ancestors got a fresh rush of energy just as the light waned so they could safely get back to their tribe and finish the things they needed to do that day. But now, we control the light. We decide when sunset happens. So if we keep bright lights switched on until the moment we decide to go to sleep, or we watch TV on our phones in bed, then we switch them off, we accidentally trigger a physical process. Our bodies think the sudden warning of the light is the arrival of sunset, so they release a rush of fresh energy to help you get back to your cave. Tien, your turn. Tien, your turn.
The second question I found myself asking was, given the lack of sleep is so harmful, and at some level we all know it, why are we doing it less? Why would we give up on one of our most basic needs? There's a big scientific debate about this, and several factors. I was reading the part. Now the surge of waking drive, instead of happening at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon before the sun sets at 6, is now happening at 10 or 11 midnight. Charles says you have the surge of waking energy at the time you are deciding whether to go to sleep. Now you get up in the morning, You feel like you're going to die, but you swear to God that you're going to get more sleep the next day, but you're not tired the next evening because you've watched more TV on your laptop in bed and triggered the same process all over again. The surge is very powerful, and so people like this are like, I'm fine, and the morning is a blur that they're forgotten. Charles believes that, as he said to another interviewer, at every time we turn on a light, we are inadvertently taking a drug that affects how we will sleep. This goes on day after day. That's a major contributing factor to this epidemic of sleep deficiency. Because we're exposing ourselves to light later and later, he explained. Indeed, 90% of Americans look at a glowing electronic device in the hour before they go to bed, triggering precisely this process. We are now exposed to 10 times the amount of artificial light that people were supposed to just 50 years ago. I wondered if one of the reasons why I slept so much better on Cape Cod was because I returned to something closer to this natural rhythm. When the sun sets in Provincetown, the town gets much darker, and by my beach house, there was almost no artificial light. Barely even a street lamp. The orange haze of air pollution that lights up in every place I've ever lived was gone. And there was only the gentle light of the moon and the stars. But Charles told me, you can only really understand our crisis of sleep if you understand it in a much bigger context. At a final glance, he says, what are we doing? We wouldn't deprive children of nutrition. We wouldn't think of that. Why are we depriving them of sleep? But it makes them a dark kind of sense when you see it as part of a broader picture in a society dominated by the values of consumer capitalism. Sleep is a big problem, he told me. If you're asleep, you're not spending money, so you're not consuming anything. You're not producing any products, he explained. That during the last recession in 2008, they talked about global output going down by so many percent and consumption going down. But if everybody were to spend an extra hour sleeping, as they did in the past, they wouldn't be on Amazon. They wouldn't be buying things. If we went back to sleeping a healthy amount, if everyone did what I did in Provincetown, Charles said it wouldn't be an earthquake for our economic system because our economic system has become dependent on sleep-depriving people. The attention failures are just roadkill. That's the cost of doing business. I only really understood how significant this point was towards the end of writing this book. John, read till the end of this.
All this leads to one last big question about sleep. How do we solve this crisis? There are several layers to the solution. The first is personal and individual. As Charles explains, you need to radically limit your exposure to light before you go to sleep. He believes you should have no source of artificial light in your bedroom at all, and you should avoid the blue light of screens for at least 2 hours before you go to bed. We also need, all the sleep experts told me, to have different relationships with our phones. Roxanne told me that to lots of us, it's like your baby, right? So as a new parent, you're like, I've got to be vigilant for this thing. I've got to pay attention. I'm not sleeping as deeply. Or are you like a firefighter who's listening for a call? We're constantly a little tense to see, did something happen? She says your phone should always recharge overnight in a different room, where you can't see or hear it. Do you need to make sure your room is the right temperature? It should be cool, almost cold. This is because your body needs to cool its core to send you to sleep. And the harder that is, the longer it takes. These are helpful and relatively well-known tips, but as every expert I spoke to acknowledged, they are not enough for most people. We live in a culture that is constantly amping us with stress and stimulation. You can tell people all this and explain the health benefits of a good long night in bed, and they will agree. And then they say, do you want me to list everything I need to do in the next 24 hours? And do you want me to spend 9 hours sleeping too? As I've learned about several of the things we need to do to improve our focus, I realize that we live in an apparent paradox. Many of the things we need to do are so obvious they are banal. Slow down, to do one thing at a time, sleep more. But even though at some level we all know them to be true, we are in fact moving in the opposite direction. Towards more speed, more switching, less sleep. We live in a gap between what we know we should do and what we feel we can do. The key question, then, is what's causing that gap? Why can't we do the obvious thing that would improve our attention? What forces are stopping us? I spent the last part of the rest of my journey uncovering the answers. All done.